Thank you, fellow Zionists, for joining Jewish National Fund USA's weekly briefing. I am Salisbury, I'm president of Jewish National Fund USA. It is day 313 of the war in Israel. Our first guest today is Nicholas Metheny, PhD, MPH, RN. We're so pleased to welcome Nick back to our briefing as an alumnus of the JNF-USA Faculty Fellowship Program, which seeks to connect Israeli and US-based researchers across academic disciplines. Nick shared his experience on campus this past year. For those who are meeting Nick for the first time, Nick is an early career nurse scientist and incoming assistant professor at Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing at Emory University. He holds affiliate faculty positions at St. Michael's Hospital, Toronto, and the University of Cape Town in South Africa. His research takes an intersectional approach to understanding the impacts of intimate partner violence in women and LGBT people, with the goal of creating nurse-led interventions to prevent and mitigate the negative impacts of intimate partner violence in the United States and South Africa. Nick, thank you for joining us today, and please take over the mic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miserbaum. It's very nice to be back with my JNF family, and it's I wish it was under better circumstances, but I do really treasure always being able to speak with people from JNF. I was asked to speak today a little bit about my experience on the faculty fellowship program, but also to help contextualize sort of what the past 313 days have been like on college campuses from a Gentile Zionist point of view, which is maybe one that you don't hear all the time. So I'm going to try to go through some of the reasons that I think the faculty fellowship is a really essential program for JNF, one that really helps broaden not only the case for Israel as an important part of broadening democracy and human rights across the region, but also something that can help really change the conversation on college campuses here in the US. So first of all, as Saul mentioned, I am a scientist and a faculty member here at Emory University in Atlanta. And when I was on the faculty fellowship, I really wanted to use it as an opportunity to gain evidence and facts and firsthand accounts for what Israel was really like. I think there are a lot of preconceived notions for what Israel does, to whom, and what it's like when you're on the ground. But I didn't really go in with a lot of those. I knew a lot about Israel from Wikipedia and from my friends, but I didn't know a lot about it from any other perspective, and certainly not firsthand. And I think it's really important when you go in as a faculty member, as a scientist, to look very empirically at what Israel is like, what the people are like, and what you see on the ground. None of that, to my mind, is anecdotal, because it is sort of corroborated over and over again everywhere that I went. I was able to see not only very proud Jewish people in very proud Jewish places, but also a multiplicity of ethnicities and races and religions working and living side by side. I really was heartened to spend time in the Golan Heights with Druze communities. And so the attack a couple of weeks ago on the soccer pitch in northern Israel was especially impactful to those of us who'd been able to visit there. We went to Christian-owned wineries in Nazareth. We went to the Erez Crossing next to Gaza. we saw sort of everything that Israel has to offer. And I think all of that evidence put together really led me to believe that this is a place that values human rights, that values diversity, that values inclusion, and that is very proud of its Jewish heritage and, as a homeland for the Jewish people, but is more than that an idea of what sort of a stable, progressive democracy in the Middle East can look like. And for someone like me, who didn't grow up Jewish, that was really important part to take away, because I really thought that this Venn diagram, this like tripartite circle between being not Jewish, being a Zionist, and being progressive in my own political beliefs and ideology was something that was very narrow. And after being on faculty fellowship, and meeting the colleagues both in Israel and around the US that I've been able to connect with and keep in contact with in the 2 years since I've been in Israel, let me know that that space is much larger than I ever thought. And while you might not adhere to all three of those spaces, the fact that there is a large and vibrant community of academics, of thought leaders, politicians who occupy that space is something that's been really important for me and something that I've become quite involved in on social media, speaking, and sort of in my own advocacy. And so I really have faculty fellowship to thank for that. It's also been really good personally for my career. Unlocking funding opportunities binationally is something that I wouldn't have thought to do or been able or eligible to do if I hadn't been on faculty fellowship. And so close connections with scientists in Israeli universities is something that I continue to foster. It's also something that I think, in light of what's happening now in Israel, is especially prudent considering how exhausted and beleaguered a lot of the Israeli faculty I talk to are. I'm a nurse by training, and so I worked and met with a lot of nursing faculty while I was in Israel. And the ripple effects of this war throughout Israeli society is something that doesn't get a lot of airtime, but something that I think needs to be talked about a lot more. Entire classes of nurses have been called up to the reserves, have been unable to graduate, have been unable to do their clinical assignments. And so for years, this will be felt across Israeli society and the healthcare system. And I think that that is something that we need to think about and highlight more in the sort of days after the war finally ends. I think also zooming sort of out on the broader impacts of faculty fellowship as a program outside of myself, I think it's sort of really important to recognize just how influential faculty are. And for those of you who haven't been on a college campus or in a college classroom in a minute, it might take a minute to remember that like your faculty, your teachers, your professors are huge influences on sort of young minds, on my students anyway. And so leveraging that influence for my students, for my colleagues, fostering conversations and integrating pro-Israel messages and pro-Israel content into my lectures is something that I've been very conscious of doing. I teach a course that is called Health Behavior and Intervention Development, and we talk about Indigenous rights and Indigenous people. As one example, I always ensure that Israel and the Jewish people are included in our examples of what indigeneity looks like, and sort of the decolonial project is how I frame what Israel is. And so putting that into the minds of my students, I think, really helps to dispel some of the misinformation that they're getting from a lot of other sources, mostly their peers, but still a lot of other people as well. And it also helps, at least in my personal experience and from evidence from other faculty fellowship alums, that it allows students who feel sidelined, who feel marginalized, and frankly, who feel really scared to know that they have a safe place with me. You know, I wear a tie around my neck, even though I personally am not Jewish. And I think that that also signals to a lot of students that this is a safe place for them. That anti-Semitism on college campuses is not the default, and that there are always, always people who are in their corner. And so when the next cohort goes, thank you, Michael. And so when the next cohort goes to Israel, which is slated for December, and I have it on good authority from the faculty fellowship leaders that that is definitely going to happen. I hope that we can start continuing some of the lessons that faculty really take from this trip and are able to see with their own eyes just how different Israel is than the archetype that's presented in a lot of social and mainstream media here in the US. I also think it's really important to look at the long-term impact of the faculty fellowship, and the 2-week on the ground time in Israel is essential. It's the main thrust of what the faculty fellowship does. But for me, equally important has been the follow-on communication, the follow-on continuing education that the faculty fellowship does that has really been important in the days from October 8th onward. We've had webinars from important journalists and academics from outside Israel who were Jewish, some of who were not, that really give us an idea of like how to frame this argument to people regarding the war in Gaza in Israel from a pro-Israel standpoint that isn't adversarial. And I think that that is especially important when you're talking to young people, to students and to fellow academics who sometimes have very strong opinions that are different from yours. And so those sort of like extended learning opportunities have been for me just as important as the 2 weeks that I spent on the ground. And so that, the 2 weeks on the ground, plus the continuing education, the webinars, and the ability to attend the JNF conference for Israel that I've been able to do twice now has been like incredibly important for my own advocacy and also my own personal edification. But also, I think it's important for you all to know just how much this experience connects the people who share it. I have three, I think, different WhatsApp groups with faculty fellowship alums of different kinds. One for like LGBT faculty alums, one for those who have attended the conferences, and one that's our entire group. And they're very active. Sometimes I have to mute them, they're so active. But it's been really, really nice to share anecdotes of how to talk to students, different things that are happening on campuses and what to do about them, especially earlier in the spring, whenever we were seeing a lot of the protests and uprisings on campus. Being able to have that communication with other alums was really, really important for me. Also allows us to strategize a lot about sort of how we can change the narrative and change the nature of the conversation on college campuses regarding Israel, regarding the war, and regarding sort of what happens after, which for me is sort of the most important topic of conversation at this point. So, I just want to close by saying that this program I maintain is one of the most effective ways to create progressive Zionists that has ever existed. Because not only are you training faculty members with empirical data skills to go out and collect evidence about what Israel is like, but then that evidence is disseminated to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students every semester. So I really, I just want to tout the importance of the program and thank you all for providing it. And if there's ever anything I can do to go back, just let me know. I'm happy to go back on JNF's dime anytime you want to send me.
So Nick, first, thank you so much for joining us today, but, and thank you for including pro-Israel dialogue in your lectures. And I guess the question would be, have you received any pushback concerning your pro-Israel dialogue from either faculty or students?
I have had some really tough conversations. I think the dynamic is quite different whenever it's a one-on-one conversation, and the power dynamic is there when it comes from a student. So I don't have a lot of like adversarial experiences, but I think the conversations I have had have been respectful, but they've also been based in fact. And whenever you can point to facts and evidence, then it's a lot easier to shut down misinformation in this environment, right? Like on social media, it's a lot different because that has its own mind of its own. But in person, I've found that while it may be difficult at first, the pushback I've gotten has been relatively like minor in terms of its like spitefulness, but really just more of like, I've never been there. Can you tell me what it's like? Are there really like different the question I've gotten most often is, what does apartheid look like? So, and I think once you receive it that way, you kind of know where the person is coming from, and then you're able to turn it around and say, well, what I've seen and what I know is this. And also, this is what the evidence says on a more population level.
And as a faculty member at Emory, have you received any correspondence from Emory regarding what to expect on campus this fall?
I haven't, but to be fair, I just joined the faculty here in July, so I'm quite new. I don't know if they've sent anything. When I was on the faculty fellowship, I was on faculty at the University of Miami down in Florida, and the president of that university at the time, he's since moved to UCLA, but at the time was sort of very staunchly pro-Israel, and so that provided a lot of cover to faculty who also felt that way, and so I didn't experience a lot of the same things that faculty at other universities did in that regard.
Gotcha. All right, well, thank you so much, Nick. We wish you and your students an enriching and peaceful academic year. We're here to support you, so please stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Sure. Our next guest today is Dr. Stephen Kutno, head of school of the Alexander Muss High School in Israel. Steve has joined us over the past several months, updating us on the experiences of our high school students who were on the ground on October 7th and being the first program to welcome students back to campus amidst the ongoing war. For those joining us for the first time, Steve is a seasoned educator with over 30 years of experience consulting directly with school systems and NGOs on developing and implementing growth plans, holding senior leadership roles, scholastic organizations like Pearson Kaplan and the Princeton Review. He was a founding board member of a private egalitarian Jewish day school and a proud parent of a AMHSI alumnus. Steve, could you update us, please?
Thank you so much. It's, first of all, wonderful to see everybody. Ironically, Saul, that you said I was responsible for growth plans. What I was never responsible was for planning a school in a war zone. But as you pointed out, we've been very fortunate. We sent the students home back in October. We've run continuous programs since welcoming our semester students back in January. Over the summer, we ran smaller but complete programs in our classic program, giving students an in-depth understanding of Israel and the history. Our Explore program, which gives them an experience and understanding of Israel, but allows them to explore more of the country. They did volunteer work, extensive volunteer work. I was just going through the reviews this morning, and they were talking about how much they loved meeting the soldiers, doing the barbecues with the soldiers. It was transformative. And we will be hosting, this week coming up, will be one of our missions. This is our largest mission to date. Just like JNF, Alexander Muss High School has also been running missions specifically targeted to teens. Now, I also have another thing that I want to share, and it's a bit of a confession. You've invited the wrong person. I am not the person you should be talking to about the Alexander Muss High School. And here is why. One of our spring semester students, about a week ago, forwarded me her complete blog, something I didn't know she even kept. And I thought she should be the one talking about the Alexander Muss High School. We're going to share her blog address. She kept a blog of every good, bad, and indifferent thing that happened while she was on the program for an entire semester. Remember, these students withdraw from their local public school or private school to enroll for anywhere from 8 weeks to 19 weeks to be part of our program. I'm going to take advantage of the moment to read some of her blog entry because I think it's so important. I think it's also important for you to understand who's coming to Alexander Muss. Izzy is from Park City, Utah. Izzy left Los Angeles, relocated with her family to Utah, and there's not a large Jewish population there. Izzy was not feeling connected. And to the points that Nick was making about how students are feeling on campus, when you hear some of the language that Izzy uses, you now realize, or I begin to appreciate, how much these students feel disconnected, not just in college, but in high school. They feel isolated. They feel as though they're not part of something. So if you'll indulge me, I'm going to take a couple of minutes to read a couple of excerpts. Izzy from Park City. Wow, wow, wow. And yes, I am screaming this. I had the semester of a lifetime, and I need every teen like me to know that they could do it too. This is important for you to understand because you encounter teens even if you don't know that you encounter teens. We are always looking for teens like Izzy. I could never have imagined the impact this tiny country could have on me, especially in the middle of a war. I literally lived, breathed, ate, and slept Israel for almost 5 straight months. My time there not only enhanced my religious beliefs and learning about my roots, but I grew so much as a person. Living without my family for an extended period of time made me much more responsible and self-reliant. But it made me view the world so differently, and now had new lenses to leverage in all sorts of ways with the hope to learn, grow, and experience the world as it really is. Not a Netflix series, but rather true life. Now, I'm not going to read everything, but there are a couple other things I do want to cover. One of the things, and this relates to one of the things that Nick said, I realized by coming on this program how vital it is to not only surround yourself with people like you, but also people that make you feel like you belong. That's her words. That is the power of Muss. We talk about Muss magic. We're talking about that sense of belonging. Despite the language barrier, despite the fact that I was 7,000 miles from home, away from family, I found that I had a deep-rooted connection to not only the land of Israel, but to the people along the way. It was so beautiful to be here. And this is one of the points that I always make as someone who's recently moved here in the last 7 years, that ultimately what makes it feel so comfortable for Izzy, for all of the students who attend Muss, but for each of you when you come here, is you're all part of an extended family. You feel invited into that family. And Izzy talks about the trip they made to Tzfat. It was a Shabbaton, and they were given home hospitality. I was in a group of 6, and I remember sitting at a dinner table with a family we'd never met, and we were celebrating Shabbat. We prayed, we ate, and we talked for hours. It was nice to know that I could be anywhere in the world and know that if I ever need a home-cooked Shabbat dinner with a family that may not be mine, but I know I would be taken care of because I'm a member of the tribe. I can't express enough, and I know my time is very limited, so I want to bring this sort of to a close. Izzy's 19-week blogs is lengthy. I do encourage you to just pick and choose. Start from the day one when she first arrives and walk through it. I want to make an important point because this learning doesn't begin with Mus. It begins with all of the things that the Jewish National Fund is doing with community, with synagogues, with educators to ensure that our students, our young people feel like they belong to something more, feel like they are signed up to a tribe, if you will. They feel like they belong here. The beauty of Mus is our ability to raise Zionism, to inspire and uplift the next generation of the Jewish people. Mus provides these important services with the generosity of donors, with the support of the families that send their children, even in times of war. So in a week and a half, about 10 days, we will be welcoming our next cohort for the fall semester. Now, it's much smaller than what we would normally welcome. It will only be 34 students, but we are preparing in so many ways for the next generation, for the time when the war ends and we could have 2,500 and 5,000 students participating in one of Mus's many programs, whether it's 10 days, 10 weeks, or 19 weeks, that we give our children the opportunity to experience what Mus has to offer, what the Jewish people have to offer, and make them feel like they belong. Thank you.
So, Steve, that was really powerful to read what Izzy had to say. And over the years, we've experienced lots of Izzy's. So it's universal with the students that attend Alexander Mus Magic. But there is a question that came up that we know that the dorms at Mus were being used for evacuees. Has that been relieved some ways to allow for the students to come back?
So yeah, so the evacuees actually did leave. Those were evacuees from the south, and they left in January, many to their homes, some to other locations. That reminds me of another story. So as we're about to greet our next 34, our students of 34 students for the next cohort, one student came yesterday with her mother. The student and mother are from Atlanta, but the grandmother is from a moshav outside of Nahariya. And the grandmother, mother, and daughter came to visit the campus, and the grandmother looked at the dorms and said, "May I stay here too until they stop the bombings up north." And your heart just breaks hearing those statements.
Well, look, Steve, thank you so much for what you do there. You said that you're a wartime head of school. We're in the same club. I'm a wartime president. So welcome to the unfortunate club. But thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you in person. And by the way, we're keeping your son, who is serving in the Israel Defense Forces, in our hearts and our prayers. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you. He had, by the way, just this relates to Nick. He did leave Israel just a couple of days ago to go back to university in the States. And I am more concerned about him on a university campus in the States than I was when he was in Gaza.
Well, we'll try to take care of him here while you take care of our students there. So
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. So to learn more on the impact you're having on the ground, visit jnf.org/support Israel. As always, we encourage you to travel to Israel with us on a volunteer working mission. We continue to sell out these missions and have extended these missions through February of next year. Visit jnf.org/volunteer-IL to learn more and to register. As we approach the 1-year anniversary of the October 7th massacre, Jewish National Fund USA invites you to join us for a special solidarity mission where we will pay respect to those who were murdered, support the hostage families, and hear stories from people who remain evacuated from their communities. We will be in Israel October 6th to October 9th to stand shoulder to shoulder with our family in Israel to support them as we mark the solemn occasion and reiterate our commitment that JNF-USA was there yesterday, we are here today, and we will be there tomorrow. Finally, take a moment, please, to sign up for our global conference for Israel, happening in Dallas, Texas, November 14th through the 17th. Join over 1,200 people who have already registered for the largest Zionist gathering in the United States. We will see you next Wednesday, August 21st at the same time. I'm Israel Khan.